Rome, where all roads lead. It wasn't built in a day. The capital city of Italy, the Colosseum, the Sistine Chapel, gladiators, far too many Vespers, but just the right amount of espresso. So this month, with the Online Wine Tasting Club, as the saying goes, when in Rome...
Jamie, are we doing this cheap gag again? Oh, this is the point where I have to say, I thought it was Rhône Rangers, not Rome.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Hello and welcome to the Online Wine Tasting Club. On tonight's episode, Jamie gets into a fight with a particularly vicious glass of Grenache.
Sorry about my appearance. I had a small wine-related accident yesterday.
Franklin gets deep into the technical side of his winemaking.
I'm very much more sexier like this.
That's what it's all about. That's what's important.
And Alex thinks he's presenting the holiday show. Sleeping on the beach with penguins, staying in a treehouse with an infinity pool, or in a tent with lions roaring. It's time to do a trip around the world looking at how Rhone grapes travel and how to bring them together into a great blend with the Rhône Rangers. Good evening and welcome to the Online Wine Tasting Club's Rhône Rangers series. Now, tonight, what's a Rhône Ranger?
Well, to be fair, after Alex mocked my intro and I thought Rome was very funny, we're actually doing Rhône. So, we know the Rhone Valley in the south of France, Chateauneuf-du-Pape. They have lots of different grapes.
It's a cool place.
Into a blend, yeah, lots of cool stuff. But winemakers have taken these grapes to other parts of the world. They're growing them in blends, they're doing it as single varietals. But what we're going to do is go a little bit of a tour around the world and see what different winemakers in different regions are doing with these wines, how they work as single varietals, and then we're going to kind of bring it back into the blend and go from there. So we're going to drink some wines, we're going to do a couple of interviews with some winemakers. I'm going to do a little bit of a WSET, SAT stuff so we can work out kind of what we're looking at in wines, how to taste, what's important, that kind of stuff. And then Alex is going to do a little trip into what we can do with blending and why that's important and what winemakers can do with that. So if you keep a little bit of your wines, you can make your own blend. I can't promise it will be great.
Nope.
But we'll see
let's
how
give it a
that
try
goes.
and see if you can pick out the different flavours. You work out which are your favourite wines and just keep a little bit back and pour them into a glass so we can give it a try at the end. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to crack open wine number 1, which is a delicious Viognier, and we're going to go and have a little video.
I think that sounds great. Let's see what the Rhone's all about. Rhone grapes, Rhone Valley, Rhone style wines, Rhone Rangers. You may have heard these wine terms thrown around, but what do they actually mean? Well, first things first, the Rhone Valley, a major river in France that rises in the Alps and flows south to the Mediterranean Sea. This river lends its name to the southern French wine region on its banks, the Rhône Valley, as well as its major wine region, the Côte de Rhône. Without a doubt, some of the best value wines in the Rhône Valley, if not the entire world, can be found in the Côte de Rhône. Savvy wine-loving consumers looking for early drinking wines with character that also won't break the bank should be taking a serious look at these wines. With close to £100 million worth of wine produced every year, it's a really serious region. Not only is the Côte de Rhône one of the largest appellations in all of France, it's also one of the oldest. The ancient Romans were the first people to cultivate the land for grapevines. The region began earning fame in 1737 when by royal decree it was declared that all wine barrels of the region must be branded with the initials of the area to ensure quality of the wines. The area was officially declared an AOC appellation in 1937. However, the boundaries of that original appellation have increased substantially since it was originally declared. The larger area, the Rhône Valley, is split into 2 distinct regions, the north and the south. The south, where we find the Côte de Rhône, is synonymous with red Grenache-based blends, with Chateauneuf-du-Pape famously using up to 18 different grapes in their blends. The raging Mistral wind keeps the climate moderate and the grapes dry, which means the chance of mildew, rot and other disease is low, and therefore a long growing season, allowing winemakers to produce rich and complex wines. The Northern Rhône, on the other hand, is associated with single variety wines such as Viognier that you find in Condrieu and Syrah that you'll find in Hermitage and Creuse-Hermitage. The indigenous grape varieties that grow in the region, like Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, Viognier, Roussanne, Marsanne, and many others, are often referred to as Rhône grapes. So, regardless of where in the world they're being grown, the wines made from these grapes have become known as Rhône varietals. As the wine world grew, Cabernet and Merlot from Bordeaux, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from Burgundy, as single grape styles seem to transfer seamlessly to New World growers and consumers. However, the Rhône styles, with their more complex blends, seem to take a little bit more time to transition. In the 1970s, a group of American winemakers championing these styles of wine, headed up by Randall Graham of Bonnie Doon, coined the phrase Rhône Rangers to help promote these styles of wine. The phrase is now used by sommeliers and wine professionals the world over when discussing these styles of wines not grown in their native Rhône Valley. Each of these grapes has its own unique role to play. Unless you get to taste them on their own, it can sometimes be hard work to work out exactly what they're doing in a blend. So tonight, we go in search of 4 of these so-called Rhône varietals that have grown in popularity worldwide, now being grown in California, South Africa, Spain, New Zealand, as well as other regions in France, just to mention a few, each of which has its own style depending on the weather, the soil, the winemaking techniques and winemaker choices. So we thought we'd take a little bit of a tour to see how these Rhône Rangers and the international winemakers who have taken these grapes around the world are making these amazing wines, starting, well, right on the border of the Rhône and the Languedoc.
So very good evening. I'm Franklin from Chateau de Campuget. I will try to give you ideas and information about who we are, how we work at Campuget. Campuget is the name of our family estate. We are in a place that I call the magical triangle. We are between the town of Avignon, the town of Nîmes, and the town of Arles. So right at the borders between Languedoc, Rhône, and Provence. The family is from the northern part of France. We were living a long time ago at the border between France and Belgium. My grandfather was a brewer, and during the Second World War, he has been seriously injured. He had to leave the north because he received one bullet in one eye. And so the doctor told him, can't stay in the north, try to go for the south to find a dry weather. And this is what my grandfather did. He went through France with the family, and at this time he really didn't know what to do. Can you imagine the situation in the middle of the war, starting a business? And what he heard about Campuget when he came into the south, and he heard about this small and nice estate, and he came there. And he finally took over the estate. He bought the estate from someone who was close to bankrupt. And my grandfather started to work here with one of his brother-in-law. And so since 1941, we are working here as a family in Campuget. So I told you we are in this magical triangle between Languedoc, Rhône, and Provence. I always have this example and this kind of explanations when I have to explain why this magical triangle is, because we pay our taxes to the Languedoc district. Okay, and I'm sure you know that in France we love taxes. When we talk about tourism, we say that we're in Provence, and when we talk about wine, we say that we're in the Rhône. So it's for one main reason, is because we have a very classic Rhône influence climate. The Rhône River creates a corridor, and this corridor just ends at the border between Languedoc and Rhône. And we are right at the middle of this. So it's not easy to understand to have such a Rhône varietal that we have in our vineyards, and the Languedoc influence at the same time. Campuget is mostly planted with some Rhône varietal. When we talk about rosé wine, we are on Syrah Grenache. When we talk about red, we are on the Syrah Grenache too. And when we talk about white, we talk about Roussade, Marsanne, Vermentino, white Grenache, and we have also some Viognier. This is the idea. What we have today is to taste a Viognier. It's 100% Viognier. It's funny. I have to tell you the little bit of story about the way my father managed the plantations. When 40 years ago he started to plant some varietal at Campuget, he decided to make new choices, and one of his choice was to implant on our vineyard a very classic Rhône varietal called the Viognier. You know that it's a famous varietal along the Rhône River, and my father decided, especially very well known, of course, in northern Rhône with Condrieu, of course. And my father decided to plant some in Campuget. And people say, you must be crazy. You can't do that. There is no way to grow a Viognier in the southern Rhône at the border between Languedoc and Rhône. This is a huge mistake. And honestly, in this part of the world, it was a crazy idea. And in fact, it has been a genius to do that. Honestly, I don't say that because he's my father, but I say that because it was the perfect way to show that our terroir, our climate, is the perfect place to grow a Viognier. When I say that is because it's a very strange varietal. If you produce too low, it can be syrupy, rich, buttery, and sometimes undrinkable, honestly. Sometimes if you produce too much, it can be very light, almost water. And you really need to find the right place to plant it, especially a place with freshness in the soil. And when you come into our soil, we talk about a fresh soil, and that's very interesting. We can see that even sometimes we have some big droughts here. Back to 18, we had a big drought for 6 months, not a drop of rain. We had the same in 17. But here, our vines can find through the roots some freshness in the soil because we have this soil built by the Rhone River, made of pebbles. I'm sure you can see it on just right behind me. You see this kind of pebbles. This is our soil. Our walls are built with our soil. So these pebbles create a rocky soil, and right after these pebbles, you have some clay, and it keeps some water, and it keeps some freshness. And that is very, very important because, like I told you, when you have some big drought, the vines can grow easily, and the Viognier will never turn too rich and too heavy. This Viognier is produced as an IGP Gare. Gare is not well known in the world. Nobody knows where to place Gare on a map, of course. It's not New York, it's not Paris, it's not London, but it's Gare. There is something famous here. This is Le Pont du Gard. Le Pont du Gard, this famous Roman bridge. And so the Gare is the definition of, is the name of our district. And so this Viognier is produced under IGP, so Vin de Pays, like we used to say in French, Vin de Pays du Gard. This is our local district. With again, this is complex. French like complex things. This is a northern Rhône varietal planted in a southern Rhône climate under a Rhône soil, but into a district on the Languedoc. So when you taste this Viognier, the first thing you see, of course, is the color. I don't know if it is clear enough on the video, but it's pale. It's not deep and rich. We try to find a balance also into the color. The reason why you don't have a very rich color, it's another important point, is because we are very, very, very careful on the maturity. If you over mature the Viognier, you will have richness, thick skin, and of course oxidized juice. We don't want that. We want to keep freshness. That you will hear me saying this word freshness many times, but this is for me very important because it describes the balance of this wine. So let's say that, for example, vintage 19 that you have in your glass, vintage 19, we started to pick the whole crop the 28th of August. We picked the Viognier the 7th of September. Okay, so quite early, not that early, but quite early. The wine process, you might be very disappointed. I don't have any big secrets, but we one very simple philosophy is keeping what we had in the vineyard into the bottle. So during the whole winemaking process, the idea will be to keep exactly the taste I had in the vineyard right before we picked it. You know, this is a moment that I love is during the harvest time. You have to go into the vineyard to make a decision. Shall we pick or not? Of course, we have laboratory analysis. We have everything on the back behind us to help us to make a decision. But the right decision is done when you are into the vineyard, walking. There is no noise. You just have sometimes a little bit of Mistral. You walk into the rocky soil with the pebbles. You crush some weeds that you can have everywhere, or the grass. And it's funny because it happens after your ride coming from the winery where you have pressure and a lot of noise with the machinery and everything. And when you arrive in the vineyard, you take some berries and you taste it. And it tastes so special, this moment. I love this moment. Honestly, this is one of my most loved moments in my daily work during the harvest. I love it. And so you crush everything, the seeds and the skin and the pulp, and you say, okay, we have to go. So I try to keep this taste into the glass along the wine process. So we picked, it's picked by machine during the night, between 2 and 4 during the night, because we want to protect absolutely the wine from the heat and from the light. Almost half of the juice spent 3 months on used oak. In the past, we had new oak, and I think it was a mistake, so we decided to use only used oak. So we buy used oak from different places, from Sauternes, from Condrieu, and from Corsica or from Provence, because it's interesting to bring the complexity of the Condrieu, because when a barrel has received some Condrieu or some Vermentino from Corsica, when you use it for the Viognier, it brings some touch, some things that it's not huge, but it's just a tiny touch, and it brings this. I think, and this is why we do it. Our goal is to have some elegancy notes. I don't want to have a massive Viognier. I want something elegant that will match with the food. I had it yesterday with a pork fillet roast. Just fresh vegetables, and the Viognier was just perfect. It never goes over the food. It respects the food. It matches with the food. And this is altogether what we want, is to have a wine matching with the food. And that is very important. And it's funny because this Viognier is able to match with very, very different kind of food. I remember in New York, you have at the Grand Central Station, you have a fantastic oyster bar called the Grand Central Oyster Bar. And they organize a white wine competition every year, trying to find the best white wine to match Eastern and Western oysters in the US. And it was like 6 years ago, the Viognier has been awarded as the best white wine. You will never think about Viognier when you think about oysters. You will think that Viognier must be too rich, too thick to match with oysters. But this one, you have the freshness and you have elegancy. The oakiness is not huge, so it just brings enough structure to match with the oyster taste and with the oyster tannins, and that's really, really nice with oysters. This is a personal taste. I love oysters, so I share with you my personal secret. I love oysters.
No, absolutely. Oysters are made. I lived in the States for a long time, and
Okay.
in Washington DC they had the same thing. At the old Ebbett Grill, they used to do the oyster riot every year, which was all you can eat oysters with all these amazing kind of great white wines, and there was always some real surprises that you go, well, what is this wine doing here? You would not think it would go with oysters, and then you pick it up and go, it really does. And I think that's what's really exciting about wine, because there's a lot of preconceived notions that I like this, I don't like this, I think I like this. But until you actually pick the glass up and you taste it and you pair it with the right food and the right thing, you can't make that decision. You can't blanketly say, I don't like Chardonnay, or I don't like Viognier, or I don't like, because there's so many different styles depending on where it's made in the world and what winemaking techniques are used and all that kind of stuff. So wine's always this exciting journey that there's always something new to taste and always something new to learn.
I fully agree with you. I'm 45 years old, and what I love to do in this wine adventure is that I'm always surprised, and this is lovely. And I still continue to taste this Viognier with many different kind of food. I remember I had many times in London, I can't remember the name, but with a satay, chicken satay. It's just gorgeous. It's matched perfectly. The peanut taste and the chicken a little bit roasted, but not too much, with the sauce was just perfect. So we try with this Viognier to keep the elegancy of the terroir, the freshness of the terroir. And this is truly the identity of Campuget wines that you can find in a glass with this Viognier. This is what we try to do. When you drink it, you drink our identity.
No, absolutely. So quick point, because usually when we're on these tastings, people always ask me my opinion on screw cap versus cork. But you guys obviously have these in the top of your wine. So you're starting to see more people use this kind of closure. But can you just give us the 1-2 on what it's about and why you might choose to use this over something else? And does it do something for the wine, or is it aesthetic, or what's the reason behind it?
In fact, there are many reasons. We have this wines called, as it is written on the label, 1753. So it's this wine is not only in this range. We have other wines, and we were looking for something that would really protect the wine from oxygen. Oxygen is really the enemy of the wine. So we wanted to protect the wine on a proper way. So we thought about, first of all, to the screw top. Screw top is very efficient, but screw top is not sexy. I like screw top. We have some wines with screw top, of course. So we have been looking for some efficient closure against oxygen, but at the same time, we were looking for something nice. And we find out after a few tries that the glass stopper is very efficient. You can reuse it many times, so that's very positive. You don't have to throw it away. It's very easy and convenient to use. I mean, look, I just put the cork, I have my thumb, and it's okay. So
once we can start traveling again, we'd love to get down to see you and taste the wines in person. It'd be absolutely fantastic to get down and see what it's all about. No, that would be amazing. We definitely have to plan that. You can bring some of your customers if you want. We can host a lot of people here, and of course we love to have people here. This is definitely the best way to explain. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been insightful. Thank you very much. So much. And
cheers.
We'll speak soon. Thank you. Cheers.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Okay, well, welcome back, and I hope you are enjoying the Viognier. There's some fantastic comments in there, and it was a really, really good interview, frankly, and really insightful. At the beginning of it, we had to cut it out. He spent about 10 minutes changing the lights before he announced quite how sexy he was in this new lighting. So
he thought his glass plug was pretty sexy as well, didn't he? So,
that's kind of interesting. So just so you know where we're at, and I've got to make an apology first. We're going to do the news. We're going to go into wine number 2 after the news, but Alex might have a teeny tiny obsession with South Africa. So it's more of a holiday show at the beginning than anything else. So please bear with him. And if you like it, obviously...
I've got the intro sorted for when we do a South African trip, haven't I?
Exactly, something like that. But a little bit about the Viognier first, but just, I know there's a lot of that interview and there's lots of great comments. But yeah, it's really cool that it is the South. It's on the cusp of being in the Rhone Valley, so it's not a million miles away.
But didn't range very far in this case.
No, they did not Rhone range very far. Yes, well done. But yeah, it's crisp, it's clean, it's fresh. So this is as close as we go to the Rhone Valley without being the Rhone Valley. And for the rest of the evening, we're going to get to South Africa, we're going to get to Spain, and we're going to get to Australia. So who are you accenting again? He's doing accents again. But anyway, I'd just like to, anyone who wants to put their opinion on the chat, because there's always a big shout about cork versus screw cap, and this phenolock, it's been around for a while, but doesn't get a huge amount of press. And I think it's a really, really cool thing, and it could replace the screw cap kind of thing, because you can etch it, you can make it personal for the winery, and it's reusable. You can pop it into other bottles, olive oils, things like that. So kind of cool. But as we go into the news, we talk about preservation systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's someone new. Well, not someone
now.
not someone new, but somebody old.
There's been a few things around from the days of the vacuum van, and which were all about trying to extract all of the air from inside the bottle. Because the enemy of a wine, especially a fresh, floral, sort of very aromatic wine like a Viognier, the enemy is oxygen, which reacts with all of those really delicate chemicals which give it the flavour. So your only way is to try to keep oxygen out of it. And the way that we do that in our little pouches is that we have the machine which forms this little pouch and it flushes out the air and replaces it with nitrogen, which doesn't react in the same way at all. But if you want to spend a lot more money, you can use something called argon, which has the advantage of being very heavy, so it sits right down on top of it. And the most famous thing is what you've probably seen in some high-end restaurants and wine bars is a Caravan, and these are quite fiendishly expensive, aren't they? They were sort of like £200-400.
Oh, they're a few £100, and then the gas is expensive as well. It works out probably about 20p a glass to pour on that.
Right.
So.
And if we did that, we would be broke, and our boxes would cost £100 each, like certain other people who use argon do. But
it's also the line, at home, I don't not drink the whole bottle, so
no,
I have no need for one of those.
This is the challenge, and they've solved the problem with how you can use it with screw caps by selling you another expensive bit to do it. But they have got a new budget version out, which I think was called Pivot, isn't it?
Oh, not a budget van.
Something like that. Oh my god. Anyway, the way that this is designed for your sort of more your day-to-day drinking wines, so it gives you that same level of protection. Perhaps doesn't last quite as long, because what you do is you stick a little rubber thing into the top of it. And the one thing which we'll give you a demonstration of this, just for those who haven't seen a Caravan being used.
We'll do it the reds in the second half. I'll get some glasses of red so you can see it. We'll do a Caravan presentation when we do blending.
But it pours very slowly, and the new one has been designed to pour faster so that you can drink faster. So there's that. But I think now £99, we don't sell them. They're not paying me to say this, but I think that's actually quite a good little Christmas gift, isn't it?
It's a good bit of kit if you're someone who likes to have a glass of wine on a Friday night and then might not have another glass till the next week, and you can open a good bottle of wine and not go, I've got to drink this whole thing or it's going to go bad. So
they say it'll last for about 4 weeks.
Yeah, so you'll get a month, so that gives you a glass a week, and you get through your bottle, which works quite nicely.
Quite nicely, indeed.
Or
through 1 day of a pandemic.
Day, hour, minutes,
perhaps,
pick your time frame. But anyway, so also in the wine news, and we are kind of slightly excited about this, because when we feel we're a little bit at the head of the curve, sometimes it makes us very, very happy. So our good friend Florent over at Domaine de la Solitude, their wine has just been named by Wine Enthusiast as the number 6 wine in the world. And that would be their Chateauneuf-du-Pape. And if you had to hazard a guess what the 5th wine in the box tonight is, it may well be Domaine de la Solitude's Chateauneuf-du-Pape.
And it's not quite the same vintage that won the prize. However, the winemaker actually rates this vintage even higher. So he was when he was going through comparing all the different years and the yields he got out of them. But yeah, this year just said it was pretty much a perfect year. It was a real treat for him to open this. So we're getting a proper treat there. The 6th best wine in the world, according to wine enthusiasts.
Which is always good. Always good.
That is. I'm looking forward to that.
But before we go into the next video,
yeah, I mean, the Côte du Rhône is obviously the part of the region which does really great value. But the next place we're going to is Spain. And they can't call it Côte du Rhône because of the appellation and the sort of protected geographic term system.
we're actually going to South Africa next.
We're going to South Africa next. That's
We'll do Spain after that.
Oh, sorry, South Africa. That's what. Oh, God.
It's okay. It's okay.
The stress of live broadcasting and things going on.
Countries, they both begin with an S, don't they?
They do.
Like Cyprus from last month.
I could have sworn I'd said that. But anyway, So South Africa is where we're going, and they don't have the Côte du Rhône, but they do have this.
The goats do roam. But that's all I've got.
Roam.
Let's go to South Africa.
Let's go to South Africa.
To say that South Africa, the birthplace of humanity itself, has a complicated history would be to put it mildly, but it is a unique and quite beguiling country. Of course, the history of South African winemaking is as inextricably linked to colonialism as pretty much everything else in the country is. You all know this, we aren't going to focus on it today, but we will come back to it one day because there are some incredible stories to be told. On a personal note, it's where my wife and I spent our honeymoon, sipping delicious wine in Stellenbosch, watching the mist flow over Table Mountain, going on safaris, seeing incredible wildlife, somehow dragging our hire car over mountain ridges and driving through rivers where the bridge had been washed away, sleeping on a beach with penguins, staying in a treehouse with an infinity pool, or in a tent with lions roaring. It's just an incredible, incredible adventure. I'm getting carried away here. Can you tell that I really miss travelling? Now, winemaking in South Africa dates back to 1659 and is mostly concentrated around Cape Town, with the major vineyards in Constantia, Paarl, Stellenbosch, Franschhoek and Worcester. Back in the 19th century, South Africa was under British rule, which proved lucrative. The South African wine flowed into the British market and then onwards throughout the whole world. At the time, South African wine was renowned as being some of the best in the world. And this good fortune lasted until the 1860s when a new treaty was signed with France, who wanted to protect their own winemakers and kind of mess things up a bit. To make things worse, come the late 19th century, a phylloxera epidemic hit. Many vineyards took the opportunity to try to make more wine, so replanted with high-yielding grape varieties like Sanso. By the early 1900s, there was such a large glut of wine that some producers ended up pouring their unsellable wine into rivers and streams. The depressed prices led the South African government to form a cooperative of winemakers called KWV in 1918. This quickly grew in power and prominence and ended up setting prices for the entire local wine industry and pushing people towards making brandy and fortified wines instead. For much of the 20th century, the wine industry of South Africa received very little attention. The global boycotts of all produce from the country because of apartheid obviously hurt everything badly. It wasn't until the late 1990s, when exports opened up, that South African wines began to experience a renaissance. Many producers quickly adopted new viticultural and winemaking technologies and practices, and flying winemakers from abroad brought international influences and a new focus on well-known varieties such as Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay. Nowadays, South Africa is probably most famous for Chenin Blanc, locally known as Steen, and Pinotage, which is a cross between Pinot Noir and Sanso. But with such a large variety of microclimates caused firstly by the wind that rips around the Cape, and secondly by the incredible geography of the mountain ranges and ridges across the country from west to east, there are some incredible dynamics at play. For consumers outside the country, the terrible depreciation of the rand in recent years has made it really incredible value for money, but vines are still being ripped up left, right and centre. To compete, you have to be good. It therefore isn't hard to see why many up-and-coming winemakers are exploring new styles and new grape varieties. We are heading to the hills that the Rhône Rangers of South Africa made their home. In this case, the absolutely stunning Mourvedre Valley, running alongside the Olifantsberg River to a winery called Olifantsberg. And here, they make amazing Chenin Blanc in several styles, but also the incredible Grenache Blanc. Jamie got to catch up with an old friend, their winemaker Elisma, to find out what's happening at Olifantsberg, and to find out why this tiny pocket of land is so well suited to making Rhône-style wines.
Our farm is basically at the moment 15 hectares, so it's quite a boutique-ish farm for South Africa. We produce up to 150 tons of grapes. Just reverted back into bottles, we can make 70,000 bottles. Currently production is just 40,000. So we do sell off some of our grapes. Our production is still very in hand as we grow our markets. Our business is not that old. We started in 2013, so 7 years running, which is almost the first phase of a winery, finding your feet, making sure you've got the right markets, the right partners, etc. I've been here since 2015 as viticulturist and winemaker. All of our vineyards are planted on the mountain called the Olifantsberg, which is Elephant's Mountain, just translated. And what makes this area quite special is it's quite elevated. So from the bottom of the farm, it's 300 meters above sea level, and it moves up to 470, 480 meters above sea level. So you'll also see this in the Rhône. It's really important to work on slopes and have that altitude factor. There's almost more complexity coming from wines or vines grown on elevated surfaces than a flat-lying surface. Not saying that flat-lying surfaces don't make good wine. There's just a different dynamic when you work on a slope. I've always been making wine on slopes. So it's almost something I'm drawn to. And the vineyards, 60% of the vineyards are Échalas, which you'll also hear something that you'll hear in French or even in Spain and Switzerland. It's a bush vine that's been supported with a stake in the middle. So almost a trained bush vine. Now, there's a few reasons why we use it. Specifically, you'll see also on our label, there's a signature wind. And we've got this almost steady breeze throughout the year, especially this year in this growing season we've found ourselves now. It was hectic winds, like a lot of strong winds. So you need to support the bush vine, otherwise you're going to have, breakages. And as it's a slope, the wind almost picks up speed to the top. So it's great because you can farm almost biologically. You work with the wind. The wind is your friend, but sometimes it's like, whoa, it's too much. So it helps. That's firstly why we did it. Secondly, you can grow quite high density vineyards. So you can get 7,500 little vines on a hectare, which is quite dense, but it adds to complexity. You've got smaller vines, more concentrated fruit, just better quality of wine we feel on our side than having a normal, trellised vineyard. The rest of the farm is trellised, where the old vineyards are grown, and those are mostly Syrah, Pinotage, and Chenin. And it gives you a bit of a dynamic between the grapes and the type of expression you get. So it keeps it always interesting. We've got 27 blocks, which we farm, ranging from 0.2 hectares to a hectare. So there's so much to choose from on the farm. We keep all our blocks separate throughout harvest time. So what's nice for me as a viticulturist is I can really go and look at block 2, Roussan, and go, this block in the last 5 years, this has been the tendency of the grapes, analysis-wise, growth-wise, in terms of growing conditions, and then give a really good explanation in the winery why this wine always gives me, let's say, X, Y, and Z. So it's really, we call it niche farming and niche winemaking, because we can go fully into a block's history and get to know it. So it's a very natural process for us then to farm and then to make the wine in the winery. It comes very naturally. Okay. We know our blocks. That's so from a farming point of view and a winemaking point of view, we work very strongly with our grapes, and we want to get down to the nitty-gritty DNA of the block and the grapes. And then our wines are not easy to make, obviously, but it's just way more natural, because we understand what's going on outside. We can just push it through in the cellar and convert the message, Yeah. So for me, I've been always involved in smaller wineries and high quality wines, and trying to push the boundary, but not too far, respecting the grapes. That's my motto. And on Olifantsberg, it's easy because we work with these beautiful soils, shale, schist, which most people have not heard about, but it's the natural soils of, even in the Loire, but of the Rhone Valley. And then as you move to the south, obviously you're getting that pebbles in Chateauneuf. But we've got a lot of quartz, which is that almost white, almost very, very hard rock. It's harder than granite, which the blasé term is minerality. It does give you almost a flintiness to our wines. We'll chat about it now as we work through the wines, but it's that is our core. We start with this extremely complex soils, very stony, very rocky, beautiful, moderate, almost continental climate, these nice cooling winds, and then, of course, very hands-on farming. So full-on quality grapes, and then from there on, it's the winemaker's job just to give you exactly what the block wants to tell you. So, yeah, it's exciting every year to tell the story of the vintage, which this year, as we spoke just now, it's been intense, and I think the wines are going to show that. It's been a real tense times in the vineyards, and if you put your farmer hat on and you're in there and you work through it, the wines will be fine, you know. But it comes back to the love for farming that I have that makes me excited but also nervous for the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So rather than going, this is the kind of wine I want to make, you go and see what the vineyard's doing and going, with this block this year, this is the kind of wine that I think we're going to achieve, rather than go, oh, this is our style that we want to make every year. We go, this is what the land is giving us, and this is the wine we're going to make with that. What drew you to doing the Rhone styles in South Africa?
So back then, when the vineyards were planted, these vineyards or the two vineyards we just tasted, they are older than 15 years, but the Grenache Blanc we're going to taste is younger than 10 years. So when the project was started around 2010, let's say the project, which is Olifantsberg, it was used to be called the Olifantsberg Project, which is such a cool name. But there was a younger winemaker called Jacques Duplessis now at Oak Valley, which is an awesome brand as well. And he had the vision to with some consultants, Eben Sadi and Rosa Creer, which is two huge names in South Africa. He used to work with them, and he brought them on the farm, and they just screamed Rhone. Like when they saw the mountain, they saw the terroir, the soils, even the weather, they said, Rhone, go all the way. And in 2010, in South African Rhone varietals started popping up. You know, people started noticing Syrahs from South Africa and white blends containing Rhone varietals, even red blends containing Rhone varietals. And so something then just clicked, and they said, we're going to plant full-on Rhone. So they went with Roussan and the Grenache Blanc, which is the two white varieties. And then the red was Syrah, Grenache Noir, Carignan, and Mourvedre. Or what's the other word called again for Mourvedre? You just said it earlier.
So we call it Mourvedre, but then in Spain it's Monastrell.
Monastrell, there we go. Just to put that into perspective. It's them like a glove. Like the Grenache Blanc is so at home here. It tastes just like it would taste in Spain or in France. It's just got the South Africanness. Grenache Blanc 2018. So really this wine we did not expect to get so much love and attention from the world as we did in the last 2 years. It just all of a sudden. And I knew when I made this wine that when I tasted it the first time, it was just exceptional. Everything worked. Like just the balance in the wine, the expression, just the quality of wine that you're getting in the glass. So it did do very well on the international ratings, and which is good, because then you know that you're trusting your own palate, you're trusting your process, and obviously the vineyards. So from the get-go, a lot of effort's been put into the picking. Let's start there, because the vineyard is one block on our hill, lots of quartz. So those very, very almost hard, let's say mineral flinty rocks. And it's very rocky on the top, and then you've got a clay layer at the bottom. So you already start off with a lot of concentration on the palate. It is, the varietals flavor profile is almost a green herbaceousness, which is always hard to explain, you can go wine foliate as well, like a warm green. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. What does that mean? And then you go, not everybody cooks with the same green herbs. Come on, like, do you cook with sage or do you cook with like fenugreek? What do you cook with? And I went back and I smelled a lot of like green dried herbs. It's not a sweet herb like a minty herb. It's more like a dried, almost fenugreek does smell. It does smell like fenugreek, but we don't cook enough with it. So it's more sage-like, more like a dried oregano, or I don't know what you guys call it.
But
Oregano.
almost like lemon timey kind of thing.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. So it's got this almost, but it's not a sweet herb. It's more a savory herb.
Savory, absolutely.
And then lime zest, like a lot of it. I love lime. So if you like margaritas, but a lot of lime and just that popping of fresh citrus flavors, and then fresh pear, quince, which I don't know if you guys eat a lot of quince, but it's like a thing in South Africa. So quince.
Oh, absolutely. Quince we have with all our cheese boards.
Quince jelly, very
absolutely.
famous. That's the let's say that's the spectrum. Now, if you listen to it, there's no other variety that really ticks all of those boxes. It doesn't have those flavor profiles. So, and then that oily, textured, tannin-like palate, which is very structured. There's no new oak on this wine. So the feeling, the dry feeling on the palate is full-on variety, which is very fun. It's very salivating. It works amazingly with food. So it's a food wine. It's also a glass of wine that you want to share with your friends and go, what are you getting? It's like one of those provocative wines, like you want to talk about it.
And it's one of those wines that I think everyone who tastes this is going to have different tasting notes. Everyone's going to go, oh, I get this, oh, I get that, oh, I get that. And it's one of those that goes around the table and you go, oh, yeah, I do get that. And every time you go back, there's something a little bit different going on, which is really fun.
Which is sorry. From a winemaker's point of view, tasting other wines that's exciting. Again, it's made in a style like it's not in your face. But if I put the glass here, I can smell. It's very aromatic. That's the thing. It's a very aromatic variety, but it's not like a Chenin. You can't pull out different flavors, fruit flavors. It's not popping over, but there's a specific smell on it. And then the palate is just concentrated. It's again one of those wines. I can't explain it to you. I don't know. I just know that it's a good example of a Grenache Blanc because I've had a lot of them, and they tend to age phenomenally. Like 10 years in this bottle, the wine would smell and taste the same.
That's amazing. So the quick question I have to ask, because I think this is new for this last batch that I've got, the wax caps on the top. That's relatively new, isn't it?
It is. You can see the lark as the wax as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
is there a reason behind that more than I can't use a Caravan now, so I have to drink the whole bottle? I think that's what it's turned into.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That's a good thing, though, isn't it? It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. I like just an interesting fact again. If you are into decanting wines, you can always. It sounds weird, but when you decant, especially our white blend, which is the Blanc or this, it opens up and it's just a way different wine. Especially when you have friends over, it's nice to have the bottle on the table, but when you decant it and then just pop it on a like a little not a plate, but a little container with ice, and you just put just to keep the wine cold, and then you can swirl it.
Decanter on the ice,
you know
just
what
to
I'm
keep it
saying?
chilled. No, that's cool. I like that idea.
And what's nice, so the wine is aerating because this wine needs a bit of air, and you can see all of our vintages are, but all the whites, but you don't even smell a hint of age on our wines. It's just that the wines are made in such a almost tight style, not oxidative, but also not reductive. So we oxidize our juice, but we work in a reductive. So let's say we don't keep away oxygen. We encourage oxygen in our wines so that the wines can age very well. So this is made in a very oxidative style during the juice phase, and then in the barrels we don't even make sure we don't put too much gas and stuff. We want it to be as natural as possible. But with Grenache, it can improve with a bit of air. So if you've got a nice open glass, like a Burgundy glass, or you've got an aerator or that, which is very fancy. But if you've got a decanter, yeah, and the warmer the wine gets, the more structured it will be. The cooler, it's a bit more mineral and linear. Just a final note on a tasting.
Hopefully, we'll get out to South Africa one time. We'll come and see the process happening with you over in Olifantsberg.
Yeah, you guys are always welcome. We've got a huge house, my boss's house, so there's more than enough room, and it is like it is. I mean, I would even love to come to your place. It's like you need to experience the full circle, and then you can just tell the story so much better, and you can talk from the heart because you've been there. And that's why we missed coming to the UK now this year, because that was just you have to touch base. You know, you have to touch base with your consumers. We think differently as nations, but we drink the same. You know, so it's like we need to see each other basically.
And that's what I'm hoping with what we do with the online wine tasting club. In our little way, while people can't travel, we can put winemakers in front of consumers, and they go, yes, we've tasted that, we've not tasted that, we like that, we love that, we need loads of it. So, but no, it's been an absolute pleasure, and keep in touch, and we'll catch up very soon again.
We will. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Have a great night.
Soon.
Cheers.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.
And welcome back. Some great tasting notes there. Things of pear and brioche and lemons and limes and oiliness and minerality and nuttiness. And what I love about Elisma's wines is they are so unique, and every time you go in and you taste it, it's different. You know, she makes amazing Chenin Blanc. She makes two different styles of that. She makes she's got some old vine Chenin Blanc. Well, they say old and old vine in 1982. I don't class that as particularly old, but each to their own.
Not when you've been drinking the Santorini wines the week before, you know.
Exactly. But going on to that, what I thought, you know, we talk a lot about tasting notes and what we get and how those kind of things are. And, you know, we have sommeliers who swirl their wine and they smell it and they go, oh, that's a 1983 Chateau, whatever it is. And they're absolutely right. And
sometimes. Other times I see them get tricked by this. They go, this is the right bank of the Bordeaux. It's Saint-Emilion on the quality level. I think it's going to be a Premier Grand Cru. I'm going to say it's this vintage and it's this a producer like this. And it was from China, which was not exactly close.
Exactly.
And it's a bit of a surprise, frankly, based on the Chinese wines I've tried. But yeah.
So what we're going to do with these two wines. So if you've got two glasses, get wine 3 and wine 4 in the glass. And we're going to kind of talk about them together. We're not going to send you on another one of Alex's holiday trips around Spain and around Australia. We'll do that another time. We're going to do Spain next month anyway, so you can do your tour around Spain trip next month. Okay.
We'll be talking about South Africa still.
But what we're going to do is do these two wines together. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the wines, where they come from, what the grapes are, and all that kind of fun stuff. But what I think is kind of important is we bring out these tasting notes and we pick things out. But what we need to be able to do is assess what we're tasting, why we're tasting it, what that means in terms of the quality of the wine, and most importantly, to pick these things out. Oh, I like that because of this, and I don't like it because of that. So then when you walk into a wine shop or into a restaurant, you can ask those questions that make sense, because many times I've people, I want something sweet but not too sweet, a bit fruity but dry, but it's just a rigmarole of words. So what we do here, and for those that, you know, I teach a little bit of WSET, which is the Wine and Spirits Education Trust level 1 and level 2. And what they have when it comes to tasting wine is the systematic approach to tasting, or the SAT. So what I'm going to do is just kind of run that through with you. Caroline should be able to put it up on your screen for you, so it all looks pretty.
Even better, it hides us.
Run through it, exactly. And now you can't see me anymore. So we're
going to make a quick exit.
Exactly. So if we start with wine number 3, okay? So this is a Monastrell. And Monastrell is the same grape as Mourvedre that you'll hear in France. So this is where our link to the Rhone is. And this is made down in Jumilla in the southeast of Spain. Warm climate, rich style, from a winery called Finca Bacara. And this is
practically a desert. The vines look incredible.
Absolutely. So this is they make multiple different levels at this winery. They make some whites, they make some reds, they make all sorts of different things. But this is their Time Waits for No One range, and it's called Black Skull. But when we talk about this systematic approach to tasting, it's about being able to put every wine in the world on a scale. So it's this for this is deep for dry for a dessert wine. This is sweet for a whatever. It's taking every wine kind of on the same scale. So the first thing we want to look at is the intensity, and that's the intensity of colour. And we've got the options of it being pale, medium, or deep.
And for those of you who've done WST levels 3 or 4, obviously we're using the level 2 one is a bit simpler because even Jamie couldn't teach level 3 in about 10 minutes. So I'll shut up. I'm eating up your time.
Exactly. I'm going to take it out of your blending time.
Okay.
It'll be all right. So when we think about grapes in the world, things that are going to be pale are going to be those light Pinot Noirs, those Beaujolais. The medium ones are going to be more things maybe like your Merlots, and then your deeps are going to be things like Primitivo, things like Zinfandel. So for me, this probably sits on the deep kind of style. And once again, as you taste more wines and you explore more wines, it becomes easier to pick that up, because if you've not got something side by side to compare it to, it becomes a little bit more
it always helps
difficult.
if you look at a sort of a white background. So I've actually got my tasting box here, so I'm looking at the colour through against that. But yeah, because obviously it looks a bit different if you're looking from a black background. Everything would look quite deep there.
Yes. I'm glad I've got a sidekick.
Yeah, I'm very helpful.
I really am very helpful. So yeah, that's good. So yeah, if you turn all the lights off and you're in pitch black, it will look deep. Well done. Don't put it against his shirts. You've got no chance. Anyway, so when we look at colours, both with whites and red, white wine is not white. It's either translucent, green, whatever, but we'll talk about white wines and SAT on when we've got a white wine in hand. With the reds, we're looking at the type of red this is. Is it purple? Is it ruby? Is it garnet? Is it tawny? And the SAT has these set vocabulary. Yeah. So you can't say it's brick. You can't say it's reddy blue. You can't say it's that. You've got to pick one of these. And as you go up the levels, these expand a little bit. But it's to give that.
And we've got a few of those in our tasting book. So if you've got those, you can sort of put your little circle around, what colour you think it is. But yeah,
absolutely. But for me, this is definitely on that kind of ruby-ish colour. Yeah. And you shouldn't say ish. That's very bad of me. Ruby. You got to go with your guns, because a lot of people go ruby-ish, medium-ish. You got to stick to your guns. Okay, so that's your appearance. That's all we need to know, that it's deep and it's ruby. Mm-hmm. Okay, then we go on to the nose. And first off, we're looking at intensity. And you get a big old sniff there. And intensity is, does it smack you in the face when you smell it? Yeah. I think this does. So this is, you've got that, you're going between light, medium, and pronounced. This for me, definitely pronounced, without a question of a doubt. And once again, as you smell and taste different wines, you'll kind of have your benchmarks of where you're going.
Yeah.
And then you've got aroma characteristics. And here it says primary, secondary, tertiary. And what do those things mean? So primary is your bright, fresh fruit. So when we talk about blackberries or raspberries or those kind of things, you then have your secondary, which are winemaking choices, which is when people talk about oaks, so you might get a little bit of vanilla or clove or spice or those kind of things. And then you have tertiary, which are flavours that you get from development. So the wine needs to have, maybe a little touch of age. It only has to be a year or a couple of years to start getting those tertiary characteristics. But that's when people start talking about things like leather and tobacco and graphite and pencil shavings and all those kind of things. But once again here, all you need to be able to do is pick out, does it have primary, secondary, tertiary? And I think this has lots of primary fruit, lots of those big fresh fruits. Definitely got a little bit of secondary. I think there's some clove. There's a little touch of vanilla in there that shows a little use of oak in there. And tertiary, not so much. Maybe a little bit, but you can kind of see that it could have the potential to do it. But it's not the oldest wine in the world, not the youngest. It's the 2016. So you'd expect a little bit of that, but not loads of it. Yeah? So that's our note. And we've learned so much about the wine just from looking at it and smelling it. So this is why the evaluation is important. Then we go to taste the wine. And sweetness, this is sometimes one that's difficult for people because don't get fruitiness and sweetness confused. Two very, very
South
different
African
things.
wine there was smack in your face fruity, but it was bone dry.
Bone dry. So there's a lot of flavours out there that when you think of strawberry and blackcurrant and those, you think those things, they're sweet. They're sweet fruits.
Yeah.
But they're just the flavours of those. So your mind thinks, oh, that's sweet, but it's not actually sweet. It's just fruity.
And you detect sweetness with a specific area of your tongue. But in order to just isolate the feeling of, is it sweet, you have to be prepared to look like a complete imbecile, and you've got to hold your nose and stick your tongue in. He hates me doing this, but it works. It really works. That stops you getting the aromas coming into your nose and where all of that smelling is done. You then put your... I'm going to spare you that.
Yeah.
But if you put your tongue in...
Absolutely, I
without
completely
all
agree.
those aromas.
This is why I miss the old Zoom calls, because I could get people to do that and have 100 people on the screen doing it.
Yeah.
But literally, if
I kind of hope they are
you
at
just
home.
take a little sip and just touch the very tip of your tongue in there, don't swallow it, don't drink.
Yeah.
If it's sweet, you will taste sweetness. Otherwise, it will just taste wet. And this just tastes wet.
Yep.
There's no
Actually,
sweetness in this.
sugar that.
So this gives us a dry wine. When you've got to be careful with it, because we're talking about all the wines in the world. So if you've got kind of a Riesling generally, you know, your German style Riesling that we all know, your Blue Nun, that kind of thing, that's not going to be sweet. That's going to be medium. Because we're on that scale that we've got all these dessert wines and ice wines and ports and all those kind of things all have to be on that same scale.
Yeah.
So we've got to remember how far we can go.
So you're not
in
comparing
sweetness.
it to your dry wine, you're comparing it to all wines out there, ice wines. And
Exactly. So acidity is another thing that you can do a little test. So acidity is how much it makes your mouth water. So with this, and I'm hoping all these people are doing this at home, you can take a little sip of the wine.
This is also pretty disgusting.
And then just put your head forward and open your mouth. And the more you can feel that saliva build up in your mouth, the higher the acid.
If it starts dribbling out, then it's very high.
Very high. So for me, I would put this in the medium world. You can
medium.
definitely feel that running, but it's not. Yeah, you're not making a mess on your coffee table right now with your head down. Tannin, that's that word that everyone talks about. Tannin, I don't like tannins. I do like tannins. Tannin is that flavor that when your mouth feels kind of furry, it's got that grippiness to it, that chewiness. That's tannin. And this goes, once again, low to high. Your Pinot Noirs are going to be low in tannin, and then you've got your Tannats, your big Cabernets, your Shirazes are going to be high. This for me sits kind of right down the middle in a medium. Yep. And please feel free to get in the chat and say, Jamie, your opinion's wrong. Well, or say, Jamie, your opinion's right. I like that much more, but obviously it's all personal opinions.
We have a question.
We've got a question.
Yep, perfect.
There's a question saying, with number 3, what herb can we taste?
Oh, we'll get to flavour characteristics. And absolutely, we'll talk about everything that we taste in this. But what I want to run through is get through the SAT first, because if you score every wine like that, you're going to have a thing of where you're going to look, and then how these wines are different when they're in the same grading. So alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol. Yes.
Alcohol, low, medium, high. That's how much heat you feel when you taste it.
Especially around your gums.
And once again, this is a weird one that you don't really have to worry too much about it when you're, drinking a bottle of wine, because if you want to know what the alcohol is, you can pick it up and go, oh yeah, that's 13.5%. Good job, I've got the goat back. Eh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But generally, the more heat you taste, the more you feel it evaporate on your tongue. That's a higher alcohol.
I'd say it's about 14.5.
14.5, give or take what the bottle says. Yeah, exactly. So this is approaching high. This is high on the alcohol scale. Flavor intensity is very like nose intensity. You have light, you have medium, you have full, and this definitely has a lot going on. Powerful flavors. So I'm going to say this is full in the world of intensity.
Pronounced.
And once again, as you go up the levels, you get the chance of going that medium plus. And sometimes you feel it difficult to go, oh, it's kind of medium, it's kind of there. But to build your vocabulary and build where your wine is, you've got to take one and stick to it. It's, I taught this class a few times, and a lot of people go, is it medium pronounced? No, you've got to stick one. Is minounced my new word?
I think it might be.
Flavor characteristics, the same as the nose. Do we get the same things? Do we get those primaries, those secondaries, those tertiaries?
Yeah.
Are they the same as the nose? They don't always have to be. Sometimes you get on the nose and it can be a bit muted. And I think we had those points about the white wine, didn't we? That some people said there wasn't a huge amount on the nose, but then the flavor all came out when we tasted it. And that's kind of interesting that you see those things. So, you find different things on your palate than you do on the nose. So you need to bring that all. And then the finish is how long it hangs out in your mouth of the flavor. You will taste the alcohol for a long time, but how long is there flavor there that you continue to taste? If it's less than 5 seconds, you're a short finish. up to about 10 seconds is medium, and past that is long. So what you want to do is have a sip.
I'm going to try the other one.
Oh, you're just going ahead of the game. How
Yeah.
can
I need to save some for
drinking
it,
away? And I think this is definitely on the long. And then, you know, you have your quality conclusions, whether it's poor, acceptable, good, very good, or outstanding. And the way we'll put that together is using our what's called the Blick, which you take your balance, your length, your intensity, and your complexity, and you rate each of those from poor to adequate to very good to outstanding, and then you come to a final conclusion. So for me, I think this is well balanced. I say it's probably very good.
Yep.
With the length, it's got a good finish. It's not majorly long, but it's good. It's definitely there. The intensity, I feel this is very good intensity.
Yep, excellent.
And then with the complexity, there's not quite the tertiary flavours in there. So good, maybe very good, but I'd probably dial back to good and know that it's got that potential. So I would, you know, end up with this being overall a very good wine. Is it outstanding? No. Because, you know, we're comparing this to every wine in the world.
Made, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're going to go, you know, sometimes there will be outstanding wines, but generally, you know, if you're buying something in this kind of price range, you're going to be looking at those kind of goods to very goods, outstandings every now and again. When you find one at the price, it's happy days.
My challenge with all of these things, whether it's the way that the master sommeliers use it, or whether it's WSET, they're telling you that we all sort of have to judge wines in the same way. It might well be that you pick up a glass of wine that they mark as outstanding, and you go, no, I prefer my £6 Malbec from the from the supermarket, and that's fine. And so it's a slightly strange thing, because
I completely agree to disagree with you.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, because personal opinion is huge, because you've got to drink what you like. You've got to drink what you enjoy. But if you follow this kind of system, you can grade the wine as very, because it's balanced, it's intense, it's got length, it's got complexity. You can go, okay, this wine is outstanding, but it's not for me.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, so you can go both ways, and you can go, well, this wine is wishy, you know, it's not, you know, it might be balanced, but it's not intense, it's not complex, it's not got great length on it. But that's not what I'm looking for. So the wine itself might just be adequate or good, but you go, that's just what I need right now.
Yeah.
So it's working out what the wine is for what the wine is, but then also what you want to drink. Can be two very different things. So, you know, there might be an outstanding wine that, hey, this is outstanding, and it's a big heavy Bordeaux, and it's sunshiny, and you're outside having a barbecue. Are you going to drink that?
True.
Maybe not, but it's still outstanding wine.
So let's talk about the flavour and smell groups that you then get into on this list.
Absolutely. So
probably quite quickly.
Yeah, very quick, because then I've got to talk about the Shiraz as well, haven't I?
Yeah.
So when we get into it, let's look. Can look for clusters, because sometimes wine vocabulary becomes a little bit difficult, and you pick it up and go, "Oh, I know what that is. I know what that is. I know what that is. I know what that." But you can't put your finger on it. But if you look at these clusters and go, you know, there's something floral about it. There's something black fruit about it. There's something red fruit about it. That's your starting point, and then you go back into it. So as the question was, we've got these herbal flavors, yeah. So herbal flavors, what have we got? You know, in here there's a few things that says eucalyptus, mint, fennel, whatever, but you can dive in a little bit further. So we've got herbal, and we've got two main categories. We've got our sweet herbs like our mint, and then we've got our savory herbs like our sage or our rosemary. So when we're talking herbal, which one do we have there? And I think this has that kind of more savory herb, almost like a little bit of sage in there is what's going. So you find your bigger group over the top, and then you can dial into subgroups until you get down to what you actually think it is, and that kind of helps you go.
And when you think what that's going to be drunk with, that's going to be some kind of a pork dish, isn't it? Really, I mean, this is the part of the world for a sort of Iberico pork, and sage goes really well with pork. So yeah, absolutely.
And then the secondary aromas, which is the winemaking techniques. That's when you pick things up like that yeastiness, which comes from, you know, the fermentation. We've got, you know, malolactic conversion, which is where you take the high acid, a high kind of like malic apple acid, and turn it into this kind of creamy lactic acid, and that gives you that buttery and that cream and sometimes a cheesy flavour. And then you've got oak influence. So those are your three main things that you look for, and that's your vanillas, cloves, coconut, that kind of stuff. And then you've got tertiary, which we can start talking about the dried fruit rather than the primary fruit. We talk about leather, we talk about tobacco and all that kind of stuff. So if you do those things and you make those notes on each, you'll have a better understanding and go, well, I didn't like that because the herbal group I didn't like, or I didn't like that because it had secondary characteristics that were like this, or it had tertiary characteristics like that.
It's that classic, there's too much oak in this sort of thing.
Exactly.
Nice.
But if you know where that's coming from, it helps you make a decision with the wine going forward. So wine number 3, Monastrell, which is Mourvedre, coming from the south of Spain, from Jumilla, made by Finca Bacara, and very good in the scheme of the Blick.
Yeah, I think it's one of the nicest wines that we have in the shop. That's sort of this sort of price point. I think it's really great.
Absolutely.
But I'm not going to drink it because I want to blend it.
You're going to blend it. You're going to blend it. I might drink it, but hey, I might blend it as well. Who knows? But anyway, Caroline's looking at me because I need to hurry the hell up.
No. Somebody's saying how much is number 3. Should we just say about prices?
Oh, we will, as soon as we get onto the Chateauneuf-du-Pape, we're going to pop the prices up. You'll get all the prices. What we like to do for people who are joining us for the first time is we like to kind of leave the prices until towards the end, because if we send it out with the prices, sometimes people have preconceived notions that, oh, this is £100 wine, so I should like it, or this is a £6 wine, so it's probably going to be a bit naff.
And we sometimes end up with some of the cheaper wines of the night being the most popular ones. So, yeah, we ask you to vote on what you think is your favourite.
Absolutely.
And then tell you how much they cost.
So,
can you tell us a bit about Monastrell as a grape? Because somebody hasn't heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let me run through the Shiraz, because I'll do that quickly, and then I will talk about the main grapes in the Rhône and what they do and what they taste like and what they bring to the blend. And then this man will tell you how they get blended. So the Shiraz, Shiraz is the same as Syrah. So you have lots of grapes that have different names depending where they're grown in the world. And this is made by a man called Bob Berton in Barossa. And Bob is lovely. I've met him a few times. We've had a glass or 6 together in our days. And he just makes some fantastic wines.
It's delicious.
He makes a lot of wine. He has the capacity to make 20 million bottles of wine a year, which is a little bit more than us than you have. But what that enables him to do is he makes some very solid entry-level Shiraz, and you can find it in co-op for about £6.50 a bottle, and it drinks and it does what it does. He makes some really high-end things as well. But then he's got a lot of cool kind of like mid-tier, single area kind of stuff. So this is his reserve Shiraz from the Barossa, which is in southern Australia, kind of about in the middle, very, very warm place. So you get this big richness, you get this big ripeness, lots of dark fruit, lots of cherry. But what your one thing that you'll always get with a Shiraz is that little bit of white pepper on the finish, that little bit of savouriness that you know you're drinking a Shiraz.
That's one of the most intense fruity aromas that I've ever smelled.
It's a bomb, isn't it?
It's an absolute bomb.
But from meeting Bob and talking to him, his white wines that he makes, his idea of a white wine being ready to go is you need to be able to open it up and drink it and sit for an evening and drink a bottle by yourself, because that's what it should be. So he makes these very kind of like cool, quaffable, delicious, drinkable whites. He makes a great Viognier. He makes some cool stuff like a Vermentino. He makes a Fiano, and he's got 1 hectare of a grape called Aranal, which I'd never heard of until everyone else in the room is looking at me like that as well. I think there's 3 or 4 hectares in the world, and he's got about half the production. It was a grape that was almost extinct. It's a cross of Grenache Gris and Saint-Pierre Dormé.
Which I also haven't heard of.
Exactly. Grenache Gris is one of the 18 grapes of Chateauneuf-du-Pape for those who are interested. So stop laughing at me. Be nice.
Children.
So Bob makes wines across the range, but what his passion is for them to be good and drinkable and share with friends.
I'd say he's hit the nail on the head with that one.
So we've talked a lot about some different grapes, and when we go into the blend, so we're going to talk generally about the southern Rhône and not the single varietals now, and we're then going to get into Chateauneuf-du-Pape where they all come together. So when you're making red Côte de Rhône or Chateauneuf-du-Pape, your main grapes are going to be your Grenache, there's sometimes called Graciano, which gives you fruit and richness. You're then going to have your Syrah or Shiraz that we've just had here, which gives you that pepperiness, that little bit of savouriness, and still some red fruit.
And some body and some alcohol and,
So you then go into Mourvedre, which gives you texture and structure that you find in that wine. When you're in France, a little bit more structure, a little less fruit because it's not quite as warm as you are down in Humia. And then you've got a lot of other bits and pieces. You've got Cinsault, you've got Counoise, and lots of little bits that go in that I could spend hours talking to you about. But
please don't. Sorry,
you are mean.
I'm mean today.
In the whites, your main grapes in those blends are going to be Grenache Blanc, which we've tasted. There's Claret, there's Roussanne, Marsanne. But what's interesting, that Viognier is something that they do a lot with. They do in the Rhône, and they also do a lot in Australia. And they co-ferment it, which is when they put the Shiraz and the Grenache and the Viognier in together, and they crush it all together. Because you would think that if you put a white wine in with a red wine, you would get a
lighter red
pink
or even
wine,
a pink wine,
a rosé. But there's and please don't go in the chat and ask me what it is, because I do not know, because I am not a scientist. But there is a chemical reaction that the Viognier actually makes the colour deeper. So that's why you get these really deep purple Aussie Shirazes, because they put about 3-4% Viognier in there, and it intensifies the colour.
So our pro tip for all budding artists is, if you want to make your red paint darker, add some white to it. And then co-fermented.
Viognier,
or just some Viognier.
Drink Viognier while you paint.
That's also another good idea. But it goes the opposite way. I mean, co-fermentation, like that, there's a whole topic there which we won't get into because otherwise we'll be literally here all night. But it's cool. It's because you don't just end up with the same as you would have with the two separate things and then added together, because you get all of these intermediate steps in the chemical chain as it develops that wine, and then those intermediate chemicals react with the other intermediate chemicals and form completely new and different ones that you just wouldn't have found there. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
What he said.
There we go.
So before we go on to blending, it's probably time for our ridiculous question.
Oh yes.
So we started in the south of France.
And, in the south of France, I think a lot of people who are of a certain age read a certain book by Peter Mayle back in, was it 1989, I think?
1989 it came out. It was about a year in Provence.
A year in Provence.
So if you've not read it, that's fine, because you should read it, because if you have read it,
it's hilarious.
You might have a chance. But if you pick this book up and you read it and you thought it was a bit of a tough read, and you thought, at the end of every page, you would reward yourself with a large glass of wine. I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's right.
By the time you had finished the book...
Oh, we've got to give it a bit of a pretext here, because why on earth are we talking about a year in Provence when we're in the Rhône? Well, the answer is that this is probably where the first time that practically any of us heard about Le Mistral, which is this crazy wind that Jamie referred to. I was about to call you James there for a second. I'd have ended up looking like him.
Okay, back on topic.
Back on topic. So yes, Le Mistral, he describes having just moved into this idyllic Provençal farmhouse in January as this wind, which peaked at 180 kilometers an hour, blasts through and freezes everything and destroys their entire central heating. And it left quite a bit of a vivid impression. But it starts in Siberia, and its route down to Provence is through the Rhone Valley, and it does things to the grapes on the way.
Absolutely.
So we're thinking about the Mistral, and we think about year in Provence, and now Jamie's thinking about wine.
But no, like the Mistral, as you said, when I started my interview with Florent that we're going to get into, he took me outside to show me the vineyard, and we couldn't talk outside because the wind was so raging and so loud. It's like, yeah, we're going to go back inside. Okay, cool. But anyway, where was I at? Yep. So the book has pages. Books have pages. You read the pages. So if you decided you were going to give yourself a large glass of wine every time you finished a page, by the time you finished the book, how many Jeroboams of wine would you have drunk? So we're going to pop that up for you to get in, and then can we go to your video?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll go to Alex's video for blending.
We'll cut it off in about a minute, so no googling.
Blended wines have a bit of a stigma. Why drink a mix of things when you could have something pure? Well, for starters, Virtually all wines are blends, even if it is from a single vineyard made from the same type of grape. We'll come back to that, but first of all, why would you blend wines together? It all comes down to two words. One is Jamie's favourite, balance. The next is another favourite of sommeliers, complexity. Now, your grapes may be brilliant and have great fruit flavours and great alcohol, but lacking acidity. Others may be sharper and crisper, but blending can give you the balance that we seek out. Now, it turns out that if you grow your grapes well, it's not hard to make something simple, fruity, and pleasant. Taste those wines again and again and put them against other wines, and you'll get a bit bored. To add complexity is just like a chef trying to make a recipe. It involves trying to combine different ingredients and spices that give the different flavours, so your mind is struggling to work out all the incredible different things going on at the same time. Let's go back to your bottle of a typical varietal wine, like a bottle of cheap Argentinian Malbec from your local supermarket. It's delicious stuff, it's rich, it's fruity, it's balanced, it's fairly simple, but somehow it's the same flavour every year, despite whatever the weather had to throw at you. So how do they do that? Well, commercial wines like these have a flavour profile, which is defined by the exact levels of all of the different flavour compounds in them. You want 1% of this, 2% of that. You get yourself a fancy lab. You can look at the levels of each of these compounds in each of the wines from your vineyards, and you can work out, albeit with a very complicated sum, how much of each to put in. And if you need to add any extra tannins, acid or oak flavourings just to make it the perfect recipe, or at least the same that it is every year. It's clever stuff and there's nothing wrong with it. But while these wines are made to a recipe, we tend to feature wines which are made by people to be a little bit different. They change every vintage because a warm year has to produce different wines to a cold year. But even within that year, a good winemaker always blends. Like a great chef, they want to look at what the ingredients they have right there and then, see how they taste, and work out the best way to put them together to make something truly special. You can do this just with Pinot Noir from one vineyard, or you can do it with different grape varieties like they do in the Rhone. Jamie has told you a little bit about how we evaluate wines using every tool we have, our eyes, our nose, our tongue, even our gums. But how do you put these different wines together and work out what tastes best? It's very clever because it very quickly gets quite subtle, and if you taste a lot of wines in quick succession, your mouth starts getting tricked. Some of this is intuition, some of it is experience, and some is science, but a good winemaker always starts with a really clear vision of what they want the wine to be, so tasting the individual components gives you a great idea of what's there and what may be missing. But it's when you start to put them together to try to work out which is better, 3% or 4% Petit Verdot, 56% Syrah or 53%, that is hard. On a rudimentary level, you start with all the component wines, some measuring cylinders and an idea based largely on the experience. You make some trials and you try to work out which is better. You then try to continue it more in that direction and see if it's got better again or if it's now got worse. But telling the difference between these is hard as reality gets quite blurred. It's always very easy to be influenced by what we think wine's going to taste like before we try it. So that's why we try to do things blind. We use black glasses to hide the colour when we're just trying to look at the flavour. We then deliberately make life a lot harder for ourselves. Rather than pouring 2 glasses and going, I like this one more than this one, somebody else pours 2 wines into 3 glasses. So you end up with 2 glasses of one and 1 glass of the other. Now this time when you say, I like wine 3 the best, and if it was the same wine in glass 2 and 3, then you've worked out you're talking nonsense. This reduces greatly the chance of error. But even with techniques like this, it's fiendishly difficult. There are just so many variables. Earlier this year, we spoke to Fergus at Hush Heath Winery down in Kent. Each year, they create more than 150 different component wines. This makes trying to find the right recipe quite epically challenging. We thought we might let him tell you a bit more about this.
If you come to Hush Heath, you'll see that we've got a lot. It's something like 105 individual parcels of clone rootstock combinations across our site.
So you must have a lot of ferments going there.
Yeah, we don't necessarily understand. We do 400,000 bottles a year, and so that's around about 400 tons plus a chunk. And we have 2 4-ton presses.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So we've got two quite small presses.
Yeah.
And we do this for a very sadistic reason. It's we're all about keeping things separate.
Yeah.
So we pick every clone and rootstock separately. We check their sugars separately, and wherever possible, we'll press them separately as well. So I can immediately after harvest, I can take you to the Fox Ridge 828 Pinot Noir on Furcal tank, or the Middle Stratney Wood Chardonnay 9.5 tank. And they've all got their own tanks, they've all got their own pieces, and it's labour intensive, massively labour intensive. We run over 150 press runs over the course of about 3 weeks. I mean, that's serious manpower requirement, and it's a really hard.
How many people do you have in the winery?
6. It's really fastidious. We're really anal about it, and it's a real focus for us. Is we want to keep that separate. We want to ferment it separately, not least because we like playing with different yeasts, but also because it's just really interesting. And then you can start to nail down, the plots that you think are better and the plots that could be something interesting. And that's, then if you get the chance, that's where you find your winemakers well. But you have to be like that if you want to make really top quality, especially still.
Welcome back. And I hope you enjoyed that. Fergus it was just an absolute hoot to talk to him. He really opened up to us and was so fascinating about the real sort of battle that they face in their winery, because they it's like you said, it's masochistic. They make it really hard for themselves just so that they can have this palette of different components to use to create their blends. Even if it is just a Springfield Chardonnay, which is from that one vineyard, it is all with the different yeasts, with the different clones. And I hope you didn't mind that you went a little bit geeky there. We tried to explain what some of these things are, but yeah, it's really fascinating. And then I don't think it was in there, but he did also talk in our interview about, was it a more scientific approach to it, or was it intuition and art? And his entire family are artists. His dad, who was the head winemaker before him, used to be the manager of an Afro-funk pop group that John Peel loved, and things like this. So it's a really great family, and we love them to bits.
Are we going to do an Afro-funk pop group instead of this?
We could do. With our sound editing skills, I'm sure that we'll be brilliant at it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll stick to wine. I think Caroline's a bit lost behind there now.
I'm not sure you've got the afro or the funk.
No.
Apparently we
have
have
no
neither the
afro
nor the funk.
I think that's a fair criticism if ever one
There's
levels
a
at
point
me.
for things you would need for that.
Yeah, quite.
Absolutely.
We've also had a bit of a debate about the level of detail that we go into, and it's so hard to pitch exactly where it is, though, that we don't alienate the people who are just on for a nice glass of wine and a bit of a story, and to hear about the dinner party stories. But this is our adventurous level, and it is your club, so please do give us the feedback, and we will steer it in the direction that...
The feedback is hugely important, and for those who have joined us from the beginning of this, we're on massive month 3, so we're... It's your club. Me and Alex sit here and drink by ourselves anyway, but when we're on camera, it's your club, so whatever you want to do. The only thing that I would mention is, if you want more detail, we would love to give you more detail, but we're also conscious that more detail makes more time. But if you want to sit on and hang out with us for 2 hours, we'll hang out for 2 hours. We're happy to do that. So
absolutely.
We love getting the wines open. We love talking to people about it. And if there's things that you want to see, if we're trying out some different bits and pieces as we go. So if you think the SAT is great, if you think, the videos are there, if whatever you want, send us an email.
If you just want to see more pics of my honeymoon, then
there's that option.
There's that option.
There's also those options.
But we really hope, as vaccines start spreading around, that we'll be able to get out into the vineyards and show you these things. It's all very well doing it with stock video footage, but to actually take you there would be amazing. So we're looking forward to that. But now we've done all of these single varietal wines. Everyone gets it's a bit of an argument in the wine world about what's the difference between a variety and varietal. Look it up in your glossary if you're interested in it, but those were varietal wines that we've had, which had one variety of grapes in. Now, the wine number 5, which I'm afraid I've already poured, is the Chateauneuf-du-Pape.
I'll get it myself now.
Yeah, you're getting behind. So we're going up to what is, probably out of the blended grapes and the blended wines in the world, you've got your Bordeaux blends, which are Cabernet and Merlot, and with a few other bits and pieces in there. And then you have this one, and this is probably one of our favourites. And the prices can range from stuff you get quite cheap in the supermarket to quite expensive ones like this one. But these guys have been there since the very beginning of Chateauneuf-du-Pape, the new home of the Pope in Avignon, and that's a few years. I can't even exactly remember how many years it is now.
So 1309 was when, 1309 was when the Pope disappeared and went there, and it's 16. I want to say 1612. And I'm sure he says it in the interview, so you'll be able to correct me and go, Jamie, you
I'm not sure he does in this cut of the interview. So
there we go. Alex took it out, so I'm all right. But yeah, early 1600s, the Barberini family, which then took the name Lanson when they moved, went to Chateauneuf-du-Pape to spread the good word and make some good wine. But this is the Chateauneuf-du-Pape of the same vineyard, same house, same winemaker that's got that number 6 in the world from Wine Enthusiast. And I could talk about it all day, but I was lucky enough to speak to Florent about it and a little bit about Chateauneuf-du-Pape and exactly what they need to do. So we can pop to his video.
Excellent.
And
he's a good guy.
From there.
So you are lucky to get the 16 actually, because at the winery we are selling at the moment the 2018. Well, it's a very good vintage also, but 16 is one of the best vintage of the last 20 years. And it's a wine we get for 4-year-old now, a little bit of cellar. So we start to approach the sweet spot. I mean, the 16 will be at the peak between 5 to 9 or 10 years. And when I'm drinking now this wine, actually I haven't opened a bottle since quite a long time. As with the COVID, I stay at home, so I don't have many tasting.
Yeah.
But I think there is you still have also primary character. So you have this lovely fresh fruit. With these blackberries, this licorice, little bit of licorice, and you start to see the evolution character slowly. So that really creates some complexity. To me, I start to smell at the back. I start to feel you will have very soon some plum, some black tapenade. Black tapenade will arrive in maybe 1 year.
So it's still got a little bit of time to develop some more of those tertiary kind of age characteristics in the next few years.
Yeah, of course. And 16 was a perfect vintage. And especially in 16, we were talking about the blend. And in 16, no, it's for the Barberini, sorry. Because I was talking about the fact we work with only our vineyard and some year, because some variety doesn't produce, we change a little bit the blend. But in the tradition 2016, it's a classic blend. So I was right with 50% of Grenache. So for Christmas, I don't know what a classic dish for Christmas you do in UK.
We do turkey.
Yeah, so, turkey.
Yeah, so I've got two things that I go with in turkey. So I lived in the US for a long time. So I had Thanksgiving and then I had Christmas, which was double turkey. And it's like, you want to do different things. So for me, your two pairings with turkey, it's either the classic, Rhone Valley, Côte de Rhône, Chateauneuf-du-Pape, or I go the completely other way and do Provence Rosé, because it's light, it's fresh, it's easy.
Okay, so you those aside.
Well, and then it's a little bit lighter, and you don't fall asleep 3 minutes after finishing lunch. But yeah, I think Rhone wines with turkey, because you've got all the trimmings with that fattiness, it really does well, because you've got that complexity that the different bits do well with different parts of the dish. It's fantastic. You can see how there's the different tiers. It's not, hey, here's 3 different wines for the sake of 3 different wines, just to have 3 different labels. Yeah. There's definitely, a development, and I think, as you said at the beginning, you don't want to use the term, Côte de Rhône as an entry level. It's just different, and it's the right wine for the right place. The the tradition, you know, the Chateauneuf-du-Pape, probably isn't something that you'd pop open and drink 2 or 3 glasses of it. You know, you want to have that with food, and it's slightly different. Whereas the Côte de Rhône is, let's drink this and have fun. So I don't think it's about whether it's entry level. And I think people equate entry level to price points, and I don't think that people should see that as the case. It's not an entry level. It's designed and it does this. It comes from a wider area, so it's less.
Yeah, it's a well-made wine for a special occasion.
No, absolutely. And how was 2020 vintage for you? Was it different? Well, not only the wine, but kind of strange year with COVID and being able to like get people into harvest and stuff like that. I'm guessing lots of different things needed to happen.
Yes, so 2020, it's at the same time a bad year and a very good year. In the past, I was used to travel from January to end of March. I was crossing the world, so like 10, 15 countries, from China to London to San Francisco. And so this year I'm at home full time. So my wife is happy. My team, I don't know if they're happy because they see me every day and I'm pushing more than never, because I see every small detail sometimes I was missing. But so that's a good point to be at home. But at the same time, this vintage was a little bit challenging because we had a very dry and hot summer, and we have no one want to come to work in our vineyard for picking the grape because of the COVID. So usually we bring some worker from Poland or from Romania, but this year with the COVID we were not able. So it was a little bit tricky to pick our grape. But at the end, it's a fantastic vintage. So a lot of stress, but we get the full yielding. You know, the production of Chateauneuf is very low, and the maximum is quite low. It's 35 hectoliters by hectare. And that's the first year since I'm working, I can reach 35 hectoliters by hectare. But you say good production, but if the quality is not there, it doesn't make sense. But the quality is there because after this dry and hot summer, we get some nice rain. And we decide, and I was right, sometimes you are wrong because you gamble against the nature. We decide to wait for the rain before to start picking. And our level of alcohol was increasing. So we're thinking, if it doesn't rain, we will be at 18% of alcohol. That will be not right. But at the end, we get this nice 50 millimeters of rain at the beginning of September. So the level of alcohol was stable, and we were able to wait the perfect ripening.
Fantastic.
So it's always a gambling. Exactly. So you can do a perfect job all the year round, and 2 weeks of rain for September, and you lose everything. But this year we succeed. So now I'm very happy.
Anyway, I will let you get on. Thank you ever so much for your time, and we'll catch up soon. Hopefully. Absolute pleasure. Cheers.
Bye.
Okay, so that was
Florent.
Chateauneuf-du-Pape with Florent. He's on our leaderboard now because he's been on 2 tastings with us, so we love him lots.
Also, is Ferg. But we didn't have his wine this time, so it's a slight cheating.
Yeah, okay, we've had 2 wines from Florent. Ferg's just hanging out.
And this is a very, very different style of Chateauneuf-du-Pape from the ones that you buy on special offer in the supermarket. You do somehow wonder how, in one of the strictest controlled appellations, where they even mandate the exact style of bottle that you have with this embossed Chateauneuf-du-Pape logo and the cross keys on, how there can be such a vast difference of quality. But it all comes down to the skill of the winemaker in blending, and of course the care that they put into the viticulture within the rules that they are allowed to do. But it's a vast difference, and that is a good one.
No, absolutely. And you see some people that they've got land in Côte de Rhône across the lot, and they make a load of Côte de Rhône, and they make the big money doing that, and they have a little bit of Chateauneuf-du-Pape, and they just price it to go, well, we undercut everybody else. It's not a lifestyle. It's a loss leader on it, and not all Chateauneuf-du-Papes are created equally. And I think that's very important in wine. There's a lot of blanket statements. People go, oh, Chablis, I don't like Chablis comes in many sizes. Bordeaux comes in many shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
And we've got to be aware, just because it says Chateauneuf-du-Pape, it's not indicative of what you're finally going to get until you look at the producer, the winemaker, the vintage, all those kind of things.
So top tip, don't be fooled by the things which have the label and a special offer. Focus more on the producer, because the producer is where the skill is.
Absolutely. But we're waiting for any Q&A to come through. We'll look at the poll. But are we going to put a poll up for the favourite wine of the evening?
Well, one of the things that we could do is we could also, I don't know if anyone has done the blending here, but I've done it. And unfortunately, because I drank most of the earlier wines, what I ended up putting together was mostly Shiraz, and it tastes mostly like Shiraz, but does it taste better than the Chateauneuf-du-Pape? And the answer is no. No, it does not.
So top tip.
Top tip. Don't just try to pour your wines together in the hope that you will create something as good as the best blenders on the planet. It probably won't work.
So
sorry about that.
So tabletop blending is not your top tip.
Not top tip, no.
But anyway, while we're waiting for the last couple of questions and the poll for that to go through, I promised a Caravan demonstration, and I don't know how close up this world becomes, but this Caravan, it's got a little needle in there, and what the needle does is you pop this on the top of the bottle, and the needle goes through. So you've got like a hypodermic needle there. And because cork is porous, the needle can go through. And then you press the little button here, and that flushes it with the argon. And then you can pour your wine out. And because it's Chateauneuf-du-Pape, we'll press it again and have a big pour because, hey, why not? So what that does is the gas comes into this space here and forces the oxygen out. So it's like the cork has never left. So there's no contact with the oxygen, and then you just pull this back up, the needle comes out, and because the cork is porous and slightly elastic, it self-seals itself. So that is like the bottle has never been opened.
Yeah, although only do that with natural corks, as we heard from a winemaker just a couple of weeks ago. So there are some of the artificial ones don't quite seal back up.
So if you have a plastic cork and you put it through, the needle will just make a hole.
Yeah.
So don't do that, and don't try and put your needle through a screw cap. There's another top tip.
That's another one. Yeah.
So but yeah, it's a really good bit of kit if you have, a really good bottle of wine that you just want to have a glass of. If you collect wine potentially and you've got a case of something and you want to see how it's getting along and you can taste it year on year on year, it gives you that opportunity to do that. But it's relatively expensive to run. It's 20 to 40p per glass that you pour. So if you've got a £5 bottle of Pinot Grigio, it's probably cheaper to chuck half of it down the drain if it goes bad, or just drink it.
This is true.
So yeah, it's good for top end wines. It's great in restaurants that allow restaurants to give a much larger breadth of tastings, especially when they'll do the little sample. So where a bottle of wine might be, I don't know, 200 quid, they might do a little 2 ounce sample for like 20, which is still a lot for the wine.
American, 2 ounces. Look at that.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, so that's the Caravan, that's the Chateauneuf. And what do we have in the Q&A, Caroline?
Okay, we've got a few.
A few. Hopefully it's not too geeky. I said I'd go wine geeky, and now this is going to be geeky, isn't it?
Okay.
Someone's going to talk about precursor chemicals now, aren't they? So.
Glycerol.
No, literally no one.
Thank God for that. Nobody's talking about that.
So Dan and Sarah have said, how many winemakers that you have spoken to this year have said that 2020 wines are looking good?
So the question is, how many winemakers have we spoken to this year that have said 2020 is looking good? Alex, you can answer for England, and then I'll answer for the rest of the world, because I think we have two slightly different answers.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Over in England, it's been pretty.
Over in England, like you've been travelling.
Well, we literally
over in England. So in England,
it's been a long 24 hours. Let's just put it that way. No, so in England, actually, it's not quite as negative a message as you'd be expecting me to say, because what's happened is that in early in the year, we got some really late and hard frosts that just came down and took out vineyards that had never had frosts in the last 30 years, like Breaky Bottom, which is in this. It's other than having a great name, Breaky Bottom. I mean, that's fantastic, isn't it? That could be out in our wine news. It's that good. But so they lost a lot of the early shoots that were just coming out of the buds, and that is the time of the vine that it's most vulnerable, and boom, the frost kills those shoots overnight. So what they ended up with was waiting for a second set of shoots to come out. But actually, if you remember, through that lockdown period, it was really warm, wasn't it? The first one.
It was nice when you couldn't go anywhere.
It was beautiful when you couldn't go anywhere. So actually the vines recovered, and what you have when you've lost all of those first shoots is that something called a secondary bud, which is hiding inside the just under the surface of the skin, waiting.
You're glad you asked for wine.
Yeah, if you want, you've given me carte blanche to go uber geek on people now. No, people go, no, I didn't mean like that. No,
yeah.
But
yeah. Anytime you want to say stop, say stop.
Dial it back a bit, son. So.
Anyway, we're on second bud.
Secondary bud shoots out, and those have come out, and you don't get as many grapes on them. You don't get as many grapes. So what we've ended up with is actually a really beautiful quality of grapes, but not very many of them. So we will make some absolutely fabulous wine, and it will be even more expensive than normal English wine, which is, but you know what, we've been planting too much anyway, so it might not be a bad thing.
So the quality is going to be good, but price is going to...
Yeah, price.
But that's supply and demand, isn't it?
Supply and demand, yep.
But yeah, for rest of the world, and I've been lucky in the last few months. I've talked to people in South Africa, I've talked to people in the States, I've talked to people in Italy, I've talked to people in Spain, Portugal, all over, which has been
virtual jet setter here. You got to get a lot of air miles for that.
No air miles. So I've got no air miles for that yet. But we'll try.
Unless you didn't pour me any.
Well, I've done my demo. It's okay.
I'm just going to redo the demo just to make sure.
If you didn't know how Caravan works, he's going to do it again. But what's been interesting, especially in Europe, the harvest has been fantastic. Talking to Franklin at Campuget, who we saw earlier, he said it's the first year in over a decade that it's been good for red, white, and rosé wines.
Yeah.
I talked to Angelo, who's at San Marzano, which is in Puglia in Italy, and he was very much. It's been a fantastic year. The problem has been for the winemakers in Europe is labour.
Yeah.
Because what generally happens is we have a lot of migrant workers who through harvest will travel, and they'll start in the south of Italy because that's where the first harvest happens because it's warmest. And through like 6 weeks, they'll just travel north through Europe to pick and go.
Yeah.
They've not had that this year. So they've
and
not
the French had a lot of Moroccans as well, don't they?
They've not been able to make as much wine as they would have hoped because they've not been able to physically get the stuff off the vines, especially people who hand harvest. But what it's meant is they've had to be a little touch more selective in what they do. So everything has been done by the family and not just people done.
Yeah.
So what I think is really exciting from generally, and this is a big blanket statement about wine, 2020 has been one of the best vintages in this century. So if 2020 was a crap year, at least if 2021 we can start getting together again, we're going to have some damn good wine to drink.
Yeah, we are, aren't we? That's a good message. I like that
message. I'm going to put that above the door here. What else have we got, Caroline?
So from Sophie, cracking question.
Okay.
This is apparently a cracking question from Sophie.
Is a frost 1 year impacting on the grapes for the next year?
If only there was a winemaker here, because I am not a winemaker or viticulturist. So the question is does the frost from 1 year impact onto the following year and the following vintage?
So, and this is slightly out of my comfort zone because I am a winemaker who doesn't own a vineyard. So I have studied viticulture, and if I remember right, it does initially, but what sets the number of grapes you get is mostly the heat that hits the cane of the grapevine in that year. The next year, you're looking at how much heat it received over that sort of that hot period. So it does knock it back a bit, but if you get a good summer, that's more of a positive impact than the negative of the frost.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you have to look at with things like that is the financial impact.
Yeah.
And it's not about growth; it may come down to quality. That if you lose a lot of grapes 1 year, you might make a lesser wine because of getting a higher yield the next year to try and balance your books. And that's the sad thing. There's a lot of people who go, oh, wine, it's these rolling hills and vineyards and it's a lifestyle and it's pretty. But a lot of people forget that it is a business. And so sometimes you've got to look at that you'll have, if you have you have a low yield 1 year, you might have to try and push it the next year just to try and make ends meet sometimes.
Do you know what's so ridiculous about this whole thing is that we are all massively obsessed, like with looking at the year, the vintage, the year those grapes were picked, and because it lets us tell the story of that year rather than doing, like we said, in the bulk wine market where you're just blending to get the right chemical composition. But there's a massive advantage for some winemakers. Back in Argentina, we featured Karim Musi, who makes a non-vintage blend, and the fact is that a multi-vintage blend. Well, is that not the same? Marketing.
Multi-vintage sounds much more.
It does sound a lot better, but yeah. So by being able to assemble wines from different years together into a bottle, you can take from the year where you got really ripe fruit flavors, and you can take from the year where you got the really crisp acidity, and get that back.
Well, that would be what's the word? Blending.
That's the one. Yep.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's an excellent question.
Right, next question.
Yes.
From Jennifer. I liked the Shiraz.
Oh, fantastic.
I liked it because it was fruity. But what fruit was it? So thinking about the primary fruit flavours.
Okay.
Well, I noticed that Louis had some.
You're gonna have the question. No one can hear Caroline.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know if people did hear that, but the question was the Shiraz that we had was really, really fruity. But which fruit exactly was it? So, I mean, perhaps let's turn it back to that the SAT thing, and he's having more. Isn't that the one with anyway?
No.
Right, but yeah. So the Caroline's waving her glass at us as well. So I think she's a fan of wine number 5. So which of the fruits? So when you look back
He's
at
going to
that,
answer this. I'm going to go and pour the producer some wine. Sorry, I'll be right back.
I'm going to pull this up on my screen. Do you want to pop the SAT thing back on?
You want the SAT back up for the?
So my instinct is that it's in that sort of red fruit and black fruit families that we're seeing that. Now, I definitely got that white peppery both on the nose and in the mouth, but the red and black fruits, going a bit more specifically, we've had a few people who are getting really strong cherry flavours, which is quite, perhaps not 100% typical for.
She's laughing at me.
She's laughing.
Everyone's saying we should just open the bottle.
We could have just opened the bottle. That's a very, very good point.
Well, the question is, does everyone... I wasn't sure that everyone knew how to use a Caravan yet.
But does anyone need a practical demonstration on how to use a sommelier's corkscrew? Double action one?
Does anyone need a demo? Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll demo on wine bottle opening. We'll do sabering one day. We can't send sparkling out, but we can do sabering in-house.
But yeah, I was getting sort of black currants and
absolutely. I think we've got a lot of the black fruits in there. It's kind of like Bing cherries and black currant and those kind of deep dark fruits. But what you've got to remember with those tastings, wine is strange because it's the one thing that we describe it as other things.
Yeah.
We don't really go, oh, that smells like. No one goes, oh, that smells like Shiraz, unless you're a sommelier. You say it smells like blackcurrant or whatever. And it's all very, very personal, and it's tied to experiences. And you went to the market and you smelt this and this and whatever. Because I could say this smells or tastes like boysenberry.
Yeah.
If you've never had that, you're not going to get that tasting note.
That makes sense.
Ever. So, can I give a sommelier tip?
Go on.
There is a huge amount of can I say bullshit on this? Yes, I can. There's a huge amount of bullshit. That people will chuck these words out just to do something. Sometimes, as a sommelier, where I've been in high-end restaurants and I'm writing a wine list.
Thanks, Siri.
Siri is not sure she understands what I'm saying. Well, who actually does? But anyway, back to my point.
Instantaneous feedback there.
When you get into and you're writing a wine list that's got 400, 500, 600 different wines on the list, and you've got to put a tasting note for each. You can only write lemon so many times. Yeah. You can only like raspberry so many times.
Suddenly it becomes yuzu.
Is there a big difference between lime and yuzu? Is there a massive difference between blackcurrant and blackberry? And so what you've got to bear in mind, there'll be these things thrown around. There's words thrown around. They say there's no wrong or right answers. There's definitely wrong answers. If you pick this up and you say apple, this tastes like apple and grapefruit, that is a wrong tasting note. But there's hundreds and hundreds of different correct tasting notes, and it's what you pick up and what you find from there, and what flavors link to your palate and your muscle memory and things that you've tasted previously, and that's how you link in. So my job as someone I do this tasting notes is only to try and guide. I don't want to go oh, Jamie says it's blackberry, so it must be blackberry. That's not always the way. But it's just, that might just guide you to that bigger cluster that goes, well, he said blackberry, so that means black fruit, but I get more this, that, the other. So there's lots and lots of right answers, and we're here just to kind of give a guide. And when we give tasting notes, it's purely our opinions.
Do you want to have a really random note about the science of aromas?
Have we got any more questions?
Have we got any more? There's probably small questions. I'm just going to give you a very quick one, which is that
you have let him off his leash.
Yeah, I know.
You have let him off his leash.
But I'll be very quick. What you have in your nose is basically it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle that's waiting for a chemical to come along and fit into that slot, and it will go, yep, that's that. And it's kind of bizarre, but chemicals quite often can have a left-handed and a right-handed version. So it's exactly the same atoms in it, exactly the same composition, exactly the same formula, exactly the same structure, except it's the mirror image of it. One's sticking out one side and the other's sticking out the other side. And these two components can have completely different flavors to them. And I can't remember the exact one that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, but isn't that mad that literally the same chemical can taste totally different? And that's how mad the science of what we're working with all these receptors in our. There you go.
I thought it was just blackberry. Do we have poll results? Do we know what people liked?
So can we end on one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Brings it back to the essence.
Bring it all back now.
Apparently, we have a question that rounds it out. So we'll do the final question. We'll do the poll results. I'll let you know the answer of the quiz question. Prices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loads.
So, does the fact that they have all been Rhône grapes make a good blend more likely?
The fact they've all been so what? The fact that we've done these.
So all of these grapes, because they're all Rhône grapes, does it mean that blending them
these grapes together would more likely make a better wine? Absolutely, absolutely, because grapes for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years have been grown in certain places where they have thrived, and things that haven't thrived have been ripped up and got rid of and started again. So when we're planting our grapes, there's a lot of history, but when we look at new age technology, we look at the soil, we look at the climate, we look at this and go, these grapes will work well here. And the Rhône varietal grapes generally will work in similar climates, similar soils, and similar things. So therefore, it's that same thing with not only grapes, but when we talk about food, what grows together goes together, and those things do.
Me there.
When we dive into vastly different climates, if we go into California, you're going to get a different style of Rhône blend than you're going to get from Chateauneuf-du-Pape. Absolutely, but those grapes are there. But there might be certain things that you go, it's too hot for the Viognier. So you might not get Viognier into that blend. So it might be more Syrah, Roussanne, whatever. But those grapes generally go together. So you look at these groupings, and then you look at Bordeaux, Cabernet, Merlot, Malbec. They all grow in similar places. You look at Chile and Argentina. They're growing Malbec, Cabernet Franc. So those grapes, Merlot, Merlittle, but sorry.
Dear God,
you put it there for me. So these general things go together, and it doesn't mean that when we get to the New World there can't be a different grape goes in with those blends, because they're allowed to. So Europe, we're kind of a little bit stuck because those are the Appalachian rules.
Yeah, they only allow you to have 18 in that, after all.
Exactly. So you can have a total of 18. But if we were in California and someone's growing a bit of Tempranillo and they think that would go well into the blend, they can do that.
Yeah.
And actually, can we get the whole Olifantsberg tasting up on the website? Interview.
Yeah, sure.
At some point. Because I had a really good chat.
We've threatened to do that a few times with a few things, but we will do it.
But Olifantsberg are looking to bring in some Viura and some Tempranillo and some Macabeth, because they feel those grapes work. Because you look at what we've got Monastrell, which is Mourvedre, and they feel those Spanish grapes can link into those Rhône style grapes. So they're trialing some of that stuff. So it doesn't mean it just has to be one thing, but those grapes go together. But you look at other climates that are similar, you can do different things. That was my very roundabout way of answering that, but I hope that gave a good answer.
Okay.
Caroline said it was very concise. I think she was being facetious.
Okay, so favourite white wine.
Favourite white wine has to be the Olifant. Favourite white wine of the night.
Yeah.
Favourite white wine has to be the Olifantsberg. It has to be.
It's got to be.
It's the Oliphant.
Yeah.
By a lot.
56 to 44, so not
No,
bad.
but I thought the Viognier was excellent as well. It was a really good
Viognier
choice
was
there.
good.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is they're so stylistically different. The Viognier is nice, light, summery, drink it by the glass. The Grenache Blanc, you probably want to have a bit of food with it. It's got a little bit more richness about it. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, favourite red wine. Bets, boys.
I'm going to go with the Shiraz.
Am I allowed to agree, or am I allowed to? Do I have to get different?
No, you can agree.
Favourite red wine.
I'm going to put the Chateauneuf-du-Pape.
It's the Chateau.
Well, it is an excellent wine. But it's a foodie wine.
This is where there's a slight anomaly. I can say the word anomaly. Wine of the night.
Wine of the night is going to be, because the people who like that, the wine of the night is going to be the Shiraz.
Yes! It split the...
It split the bill.
Of course.
Right. People who have had a good evening.
32%.
21.
19.
Excellent.
100%.
Even with our great audio editing, so thank you.
Is Caroline bribing you in the chat?
I think she is, yeah.
She is, or just the production value is great.
Me.
It all came down to the shirt then in the end. That's what saved the day.
It's not.
It is definitely not. If there's one thing it's not down to. Right. But anyway,
Shall we put ourselves out the misery with the Peter Mail question? Which is possibly another one of the most random questions we've asked on these things.
It's not. It's probably the least random. So anyway, for those who are interested, bottle sizes. I think we've got a standard bottle which is 750 ml. I think a lot of people have heard of a Magnum, which is 2 bottles side by side.
Have you heard of a Bagnum? That's a 1.5 litre bag. That's good, and it's actually quite a nice quantity of wine. They're good. I like those. Well, sorry, I put you off.
Roll credits.
No, don't.
Anyway. I'm not giving it. She's not excited there. Caroline was done for the night.
Yeah. We're only half an hour.
So you've got the Magnum, which is 1.5 litres, and then a Jeroboam is double that again. So it's 4 bottles in one is a Jeroboam, which is a wonderful size for your 3 households or 1 sommelier at Christmas. So the book has... I'm going to get my notes so I don't lie to you. The book has 224 pages, according to Amazon. Other book sizes may differ depending on your print size. So that would mean you would have to drink 56,000 millilitres of wine at a 250 ml glass, which is 74.6 bottles, which is 19 Jeroboams.
So 6 of you got that right, I believe.
6 of you
so
got that
well
right.
done
so
to
you guys. Are smart geniuses.
You win the Peter Mail Jeroboam Prize of the night, which is the pride of knowing
what we know.
What we know.
Or knowing what we Googled earlier to put the numbers together.
Precisely, yes.
But there we go. But anyway, coming up next, in January, we're doing Spain. Our Discoveries level, we're doing a little tour of Spain.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
That's going to be fun. But the Adventures level, we're doing a Rioja masterclass. So there's going to be more reds in that. There's going to be 4 reds in that. Mm-hmm. So just to be a little bit different, we're going to do a white Rioja, a couple of things from Rioja from different regions, and then some aged bits and pieces. And then going into February, we're going to do wines in New Zealand. I've been in touch with the guys at Wines of New Zealand, and they're helping us out with some bits and pieces. So that should be a lot of fun. But once again, we are building. We're trying to get, winemakers and things like that, but we want to know what you guys want. If you want more geeky, if you want less geeky, if you want to do blind tastings, whatever you want to do, it is your club. We're obviously got the monthly running, but if you wanted to do a one-off blind tasting box or things like that, shout at us. We are happy to do what you want.
I definitely love the idea of a competition one where people are actually really trying to get based on, we've gone through that way of doing it. So, okay, now you're thinking, how much of those tertiary characters are there? And what year is it? Prices.
Prices.
Yeah.
Prices.
So,
Caroline's got them.
They're up.
There we are.
The red wine of the night is the most expensive, but the Berton.
But the wine of the
Shiraz
night is less money.
is less money, and I think that is an absolute cracker. Jamie came up with a good pairing with turkey, the Chateauneuf-du-Pape. Apologies for anyone who has bought the Christmas sets. They're shipping next week, but you will get to try the Domaine de la Solitude again, because you can't turn down the chance to think about this in the same as turkey. So it would just be such a good pairing. I'm not sure about the Provence Rosé one. I'm just, we'll see.
Some people have great wine pairings and some people are wrong. It's okay.
That's
But
fair.
on that note, we love you all dearly. Thank you very much.
thank you.
I know we've overrun a little bit, but
Hideously.
I hope you've enjoyed overrunning a little bit. And if we need to do that, that's what we'll do forever. But I think that's it, isn't it?
Thank
So we
you very
can,
much. Let's
roll
roll
credits.
credits.